I watched as my entire family crowded around my sister Emma's hospital bed, showering her with love while blaming me for her accident. That was the final straw after 26 years of being their scapegoat. I left without a word, but they're desperate. Calls a month later weren't what I expected. If you're watching this and have ever felt like the black sheep of your family, you're not alone. I'm sharing my story today because sometimes the most painful family betrayals lead to unexpected freedom. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if this resonates with your experience, please subscribe to join our community of survivors. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up as Olivia Mitchell, the middle child in what appeared to be a picture-perfect family, I learned early on that my role was predetermined. I was the family scapegoat. No matter what went wrong in our household, somehow the blame always landed squarely on my shoulders. My older sister Sophia, now 32, was the golden child from day one, with her perfect grades, perfect looks, and now her perfect life, married to Bradley, a wealthy investment banker with 2 immaculately behaved children. She could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Every achievement of hers was celebrated with fanfare, while my accomplishments were barely acknowledged. Then there was Emma, my younger sister by 5 years, T24. She still played the role of the baby of the family to perfection. Spoiled, manipulative, and incredibly dramatic, Emma had mastered the art of getting whatever she wanted through tears and tantrums. Our parents indulged her every whim, and she knew exactly how to twist situations to make me look like the villain. Our father, Richard Mitchell, built his construction company from the ground up and never let anyone forget it. A controlling man who valued appearance above all else, he ruled our family with an iron fist, disguised in an expensive suit. Any perceived slight to the family image was met with cold fury, especially if I was the one responsible, my mother. Martha, a former beauty queen who gave up her pageant dreams to become the perfect corporate wife, channeled all her frustrated ambitions into creating the illusion of a flawless family. She scrutinized every aspect of our lives. Our clothes, our friends, our hobbies, all had to align with her vision of perfection. When they didn't, particularly in my case, her disappointment was palpable. We lived in Oak Ridge, an affluent suburb just outside Boston, in a sprawling colonial home that featured regularly in local home and garden tours. Behind the manicured hedges and the gleaming windows, however, our family dynamic was far from the harmony we projected to the neighbors. The pattern started when I was barely 4 years old. Sophia had broken our mother's favorite crystal vase while playing indoors against the rules. When our parents came running at the sound of shattering glass, Sophia tearfully pointed at me. "Olivia pushed me," she lied. Despite my protests, I was sent to my room without dinner, while Sophia received comforting words and ice cream to recover from the scare. This incident became the template for the next 2 decades. When Emma spilled juice on our father's important contracts at age 6, I was blamed for not watching her properly. When Sophia crashed the car at 17, I had distracted her from the passenger seat, despite the fact that I wasn't even in the car. When our father's blood pressure rose to dangerous levels, it was because I caused him stress by choosing psychology instead of business as my college major. The irony wasn't lost on me. I ended up studying the very dynamics that shaped my childhood. I threw myself into my education, eventually earning a PhD in psychology with a focus on family systems. My dissertation on scapegoating mechanisms in dysfunctional families was published in a respected academic journal. None of my family attended my graduation. My father was golfing, my mother had a charity luncheon, Sophia was on vacation, and Emma had a really important party that weekend. My accomplishments were consistently minimized. "It's just a paper, not like Sophia closing that $1 million account," my father said dismissively when my research received a prestigious grant. When I was invited to speak at an international conference, my mother's only comment was, "Are you sure the outfit is appropriate for public speaking? You know, you're not as slender as your sisters." For years, I maintained the relationship out of a sense of obligation and the faint hope that someday things might change. I attended every family gathering, endured every backhanded compliment, absorbed every unfair accusation. I helped plan Sophia's elaborate wedding, babysit her children without thanks, and listened to Emma's relationship dramas for hours. All the while, I kept my own life small and unobtrusive, trying desperately not to give them any ammunition to use against me. Recently, The scapegoating had reached absurd levels. When Sophia's husband was caught flirting with a colleague at the company Christmas party, somehow it became my fault for always making men feel uncomfortable with your analytical talk. When my father's golf buddy backed out of an investment opportunity, I was blamed because I had created a tense atmosphere during their dinner at our house, despite the fact that I had only been present for 20 minutes to drop off a book my mother had asked to borrow. The tensions reached their breaking point during our annual summer gathering at the family lake house in New Hampshire. For 1 week every July, we all took time off to stay at the sprawling property my grandparents had purchased decades ago. It was supposed to be a time of relaxation and bonding. Instead, it became the setting for the final act of my role as the family scapegoat. The lake house had always been my favorite place despite the family drama that inevitably unfolded there. This year, I'd brought Jason, my boyfriend of 8 months, hoping that having him there might provide some buffer against my family's usual treatment. He was the first man I'd felt comfortable enough to introduce to them, a fellow psychologist who I thought would understand the dynamics at play. The trouble started on the third day. While I was helping my father set up the boat dock, I noticed Emma flirting with Jason on the porch. She was touching his arm, flipping her hair, and laughing too loudly at whatever he was saying. This wasn't unusual behavior for her. Emma had a history of going after anything that was mine, from childhood toys to college friends. The fact that she had her own husband, Tyler, watching from just a few feet away didn't seem to matter. That evening, I found a moment to speak with her privately in the kitchen while everyone else was having drinks on the deck. "Emma, I saw you with Jason today," I said quietly, keeping my voice calm and non-accusatory. "I'd appreciate it if you'd respect my relationship." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh my God, Olivia, you're so paranoid. We were just talking. Not everything is about you. I know what flirting looks like, Emma. You're married and Jason is my boyfriend. Just please back off." Her expression changed then, a flash of anger quickly replaced by a calculating look I knew all too well. "You're just jealous because he was actually enjoying my company. Has it occurred to you that maybe he's bored with your constant psychoanalysis of everything?" I took a deep breath. "This conversation is over. Just please respect my boundaries." As I turned to walk away, Emma suddenly called out, "Mom, Dad, Olivia's accusing me of trying to steal her boyfriend." Before I could respond, our parents and Sophia were in the kitchen, faces already set in familiar expressions of disappointment directed at me. "For heaven's sake, Olivia, must you always create drama?" My mother sighed. "Your sister would never do something like that," my father added firmly. Sophia shook her head. "You've always been so insecure, Liv." I looked at each of their faces, seeing the same script playing out that had defined my entire life. No one asked for my side. No one considered that Emma might be lying. I was guilty before any evidence was presented, simply because I was me. "Fine," I said quietly. "Believe what you want." I walked away, finding Jason on the deck. When I explained what had happened, he seemed understanding, putting his arm around me and assuring me he had no interest in Emma. I felt a momentary relief that at least someone was on my side. The next morning, everything changed. I was reading in the sunroom when I heard a scream and a series of thuds from the main staircase. I ran to find Emma lying at the bottom of the stairs, holding her ankle and crying dramatically. No one else had been in the foyer, just Emma and me. "What happened?" I asked, rushing to her side. Her tear-filled eyes met mine with a look of pure malice before she screamed. "She pushed me." Olivia pushed me down the stairs. I stood frozen in shock. "What?" I was in the sunroom. I didn't even. Within seconds, the entire family converged on the scene. My father immediately knelt beside Emma, while my mother called for someone to get ice. Sophia pulled out her phone to call for medical help. "What did you do?" My father growled at me, not even questioning Emma's accusation. "I didn't do anything. I was reading in the sunroom when I heard her fall." "Stop lying," Sophia snapped. "You've been jealous of Emma your entire life." My mother looked at me with disgust. "I knew your resentment would eventually turn dangerous." Jason entered the room, confusion written across his face as he took in the scene. "What's going on?" Olivia pushed Emma down the stairs. My mother informed him, as if stating an established fact. I turned to him desperately. "Jason, I was in the sunroom with you just a minute ago. You know I couldn't have but I could already see doubt creeping into his expression. The united front of my family's conviction was powerful, and he'd only known me for 8 months. I stepped out to take a call, he said hesitantly. I didn't see. Emma was taken to the local hospital, dramatically moaning about the pain, despite the doctor's later assessment that she had suffered only a mild sprain. The entire family accompanied her, creating a protective circle around her hospital bed, while casting accusing glances at me. I stood in the doorway of the hospital room, watching the scene unfold like I was outside my own body. My father stroked Emma's hair, murmuring comforting words. My mother adjusted her pillows with tender care. Sophia held her hand, promising to stay the night if needed. Even Jason had been absorbed into their circle, offering to get Emma something from the cafeteria. You've always been jealous of your sisters, my father said loudly enough for the nursing staff to hear, but this time you've gone too far. I always knew there was something wrong with you, my mother added, her voice dripping with contempt. Maybe it's time we consider getting you some real help. Sophia looked up from Emma's side, her expression a mixture of pity and disgust. I think you need professional help, Olivia. This isn't normal behavior. The irony of a corporate executive telling a PAAHDAADDDDHEHE psychologist that she needed professional help was apparently lost on everyone. I watched as Jason's expression shifted from confusion to acceptance of their narrative. He avoided my eyes, already being pulled into the gravitational force of my family's unified reality. In that moment, standing in the antiseptic-centered hospital room with the melodramatic sobs of my sister as background music, something inside me finally broke, or perhaps something finally healed. A clarity washed over me as I realized with absolute certainty that this pattern would never change. For 26 years, I had been cast in a role that was unalterable in the Mitchell family story. I looked at each of their faces one last time, my father's righteous anger, my mother's performative concern, Sophia's smug superiority, Emma's calculated victimhood, and Jason's wavering loyalty. I understood with perfect clarity that no amount of evidence, accomplishment, or good behavior would ever change how they saw me. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the hospital room. No one called after me. No one followed in their story. My exit was probably just another act of selfishness, another confirmation of my guilt. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't concerned with their interpretation. I was writing my own story now. The drive back to the lake house was surreal. The familiar winding roads along the shoreline seemed different somehow, as if I was seeing them through new eyes. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This wasn't an impulsive decision born from hurt feelings. This was the culmination of 26 years of systematic mistreatment, and my response would be equally systematic. When I arrived, the house was empty, everyone still at the hospital, fussing over Emma's minor injury. I parked my car around the back, out of sight from the driveway. If they returned unexpectedly, I wanted time to finish what I needed to do. I walked directly to my assigned bedroom, the smallest one in the house, with the perpetually leaky ceiling during rainstorms. I had never bothered to personalize the space much, perhaps subconsciously knowing that I would eventually leave it behind. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and began to methodically pack my belongings. I took only what truly mattered: my clothes, my laptop containing my research, a few books that had guided me through difficult times. I left behind the expensive watch my parents had given me for Christmas, the same model they'd given all 3 daughters, though Sophia's and Emma's were studded with diamonds while mine was the basic version. I left the uncomfortable designer dresses my mother had pressured me to buy. I left behind all the physical reminders of trying to fit into a role that was never meant for me. While packing, I discovered a small locked box pushed to the back of the closet shelf. I immediately recognized it, my childhood diary with its tiny brass lock. I had hidden it here years ago after my mother had accidentally read it, and then used my private thoughts against me during a family argument. I found the key taped to the bottom of the box, just where my 16-year-old self had hidden it. Opening the faded cover, I sat on the bed and began to read. The pages were filled with the meticulous documentation of a child trying to make sense of her treatment. I had recorded dates, exact quotes, and my confused feelings about each incident of scapegoating. One entry from when I was 12 stood out: April 18th, 2007. Today was Sophia's high school graduation party. Mom spent all week preparing, and everything looked perfect. During the party, Emma, 7, knocked over the punch bowl onto Mom's white carpet. When Mom came running, Emma started crying and said I told her to carry it. I was outside the entire time talking to Grandma Eleanor, but Mom sent me to my room for the rest of the party, and I could hear everyone having fun downstairs. Dad came up later and said I needed to stop creating problems on special days. Why doesn't anyone ever believe me? Grandma Eleanor tried to tell them I was with her, but Mom just changed the subject. 20 entries like this filled the pages, each one a perfect record of the family dynamic. I carefully packed the diary in my suitcase. It wasn't just a childhood memento, but evidence of a pattern I was only now finding the strength to break. On the dresser sat the family heirloom necklace my grandmother Eleanor had given me shortly before she passed away. My mother had made it clear at the time that she thought the emerald pendant should have gone to Sophia as the eldest, and that Grandma Eleanor had always been a bit odd in her decisions. I picked up the necklace, feeling its weight in my palm. For a moment, I considered leaving it behind. It was, after all, a connection to the family I was preparing to leave, but something stopped me. Grandma Eleanor had specifically chosen me to have this, whispering that the quiet middle ones often see the clearest. She had been the only family member who seemed to truly see me. I fastened the necklace around my neck and tucked it beneath my shirt, close to my heart. In its place on the dresser, I left a short handwritten note. I won't be your scapegoat anymore. 5 words that encapsulated 2 decades of built-up resolve. This departure wasn't a spontaneous reaction to one bad day. It was the execution of a plan that had been forming in my subconscious for years. I had prepared for this moment without even realizing it, maintaining a separate bank account my parents knew nothing about, keeping my most important professional contacts separate from my family, building a support network of friends who knew the real me. I called my closest friend, Dr. Lauren Williams, whom I had met during my doctoral program. She had witnessed enough of my family's treatment over the years to understand exactly what I was doing without lengthy explanations. I need a place to stay for a few days, I said when she answered. There was only the briefest pause before she replied, the guest room is already made up. How soon will you be here? Next, I composed an email to my department chair at the university, where I held a research position, requesting a short leave of absence for personal reasons. I set it to send automatically the next morning. I then contacted my landlord in Boston to inform him I would not be renewing my lease the following month. These practical steps helped anchor me in the reality of my decision. The most symbolic moment came when I changed my phone number through my provider's app. I watched as the confirmation appeared on my screen, a digital severing of one of the primary tethers my family had used to reach me whenever they needed their scapegoat. I created a new email address, simple and free from the identity they had assigned me. I had always maintained financial independence, a decision my parents had criticized as unnecessarily stubborn when they offered to add me to their accounts like your sisters. That stubborn independence now meant freedom. I had my own savings, my own credit cards, and my own financial identity completely separate from the Mitchell family resources. Before leaving, I gathered the few family photos I'd kept in my room. In a deliberate act of reclaiming my narrative, I carefully cut out everyone except myself from each picture. I wasn't erasing my history. I was editing my story to center myself as the protagonist rather than the villain. I took one final look around the room that had never really felt like mine. The afternoon light cast familiar patterns on the faded wallpaper, and for a moment I felt a twinge of something, not regret exactly, but acknowledgement of what should have been. This should have been a place of refuge and belonging. Instead, it had been just another stage for my assigned role. As I carried my suitcase to the car, I noticed dark clouds gathering over the lake, a summer storm brewing in the distance. The timing seemed fitting, nature's drama providing cover for my quiet exit. I placed my suitcase in the trunk, got into the driver's seat, and adjusted my mirrors. In the reflection, I could see the lake house growing smaller as I drove away, the setting sun casting it in a golden light that belied the darkness it had contained for me. I had expected to cry, to feel the weight of grief that comes with such endings. Instead, I felt a profound sense of relief mixed with nervous anticipation. For the first time in 26 years, I was free to write my own story. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to navigate without the burden of carrying my family's projections. A cozy 2-bedroom place filled with books and plants, the complete opposite of my family's pristine, showroom-like homes. The guest room had a view of a small community garden, and I spent hours watching people tend to their plots, finding strange comfort in these strangers living their ordinary lives. "I've been waiting years for you to make this break," Lauren said over tea the morning after my arrival. We sat at her small kitchen table, morning light streaming through the window. "Was it that obvious?" I asked. "To anyone outside your family?" "Absolutely." She stirred her tea thoughtfully. "The first time I met them at your doctoral ceremony, I watched them dismiss your achievement and then blame you for not reserving a better restaurant for dinner. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Having an outside perspective validate my experience was both comforting and painful. For so long, I had doubted my own perceptions, wondering if perhaps I was being desensitive, or if I truly was the problem. Lauren's clear-eyed assessment of my family dynamic helped anchor me in my decision. That first week was a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I mourned not for the family I had left behind, but for the family I had never had. I grieved for the little girl who had desperately tried to earn love that was never going to be freely given, for the teenager who had learned to make herself small to avoid criticism, for the young woman who had achieved academic success in a subconscious attempt to finally earn her parents' approval. If you're watching this and you've ever had to leave toxic family members behind, you know this strange grief, mourning the relationship you deserved rather than the one you had. It's like phantom limb pain for something that was never actually there. Drop a heart in the comments if you felt this particular kind of loss, and subscribe if you want to follow the rest of my journey toward healing. Lauren connected me with Dr. Chen, a therapist specializing in family trauma and estrangement. In our first session, she helped me understand the family dynamics that had shaped my experience. "What you're describing is a classic scapegoat role," Dr. Chen explained. "Dysfunctional family systems often designate one member to carry the blame for the entire system's problems. It's not random. Usually it's the family member who threatens the status quo in some way, often the most emotionally honest or independent member." Over the next few weeks, I attended therapy twice weekly, unpacking decades of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. Dr. Chen helped me see that my family's treatment wasn't my fault, and that the clarity I had found in the hospital that day was the result of my inherent health, not some deficiency as my family had always implied. While working through these emotional revelations, I also took practical steps to establish my new life. After a week at Lauren's, I found a small but charming apartment in Portland, Maine, far enough from Boston to minimize accidental encounters with family or their social status, but close enough to maintain the professional connections I had worked hard to build. The apartment was in an old converted textile mill with exposed brick walls and large windows. It had character and history, unlike the sterile perfection of my parents' homes. I signed a 6-month lease, the first major commitment to my new independent life. I applied for a research position at a small but well-respected institute in Portland that specialized in trauma studies. During the interview, I spoke with confidence about my work, without the constant internal editor that had previously monitored every word for potential family criticism. The director, Dr. Abigail Montgomery, seemed impressed by my publication record and offered me the position on the spot, with the freedom to continue my research on family systems and psychological resilience. Each day brought small victories. In reclaiming my identity, I painted my apartment walls a deep teal color that my mother would have called attention-seeking. I bought comfortable furniture based solely on what appealed to me, not what would impress visitors. I adopted a rescue cat and named him Einstein, despite my father's frequent declarations that pets were unnecessary complications. I rediscovered hobbies I had abandoned years ago because of my family's dismissal. I joined a local pottery studio, recalling how my teenage interest in ceramics had been cut short when my mother complained about the clay under my fingernails being unladylike. I started hiking on weekends, an activity my father had declared a waste of time that could be spent networking. The most challenging adjustment was learning to make decisions without anticipating blame. For years, every choice I made was filtered through the lens of how will my family use this against me. Now with that filter removed, I sometimes found myself paralyzed by simple decisions like what to eat for dinner or what movie to watch. Chen helped me recognize these moments as opportunities to connect with my authentic preferences. Gradually, these moments became less frequent as I strengthened my connection to my true self. 3 weeks into my new life, I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about my family's potential reaction to my actions. That night, I celebrated this milestone by ordering takeout from a Thai restaurant, cuisine my mother had always declared too exotic, and eating it directly from the container while watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures, a subject my father had once called uselessly academic. My professional life began to flourish without the constant undercurrent of family criticism. My research on resilience factors in survivors of family trauma gained positive attention from colleagues in the field. I was invited to contribute to a textbook on family systems therapy, an opportunity that would have been diminished and dismissed at the Mitchell family dinner table but was celebrated over coffee with my new colleagues. My neighbor in the apartment next door, Mai Zhang, a graphic designer with a quick wit and a talent for making homemade dumplings, became a friend. Unlike my interactions with my family, our friendship was based on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives. When I shared some of my accomplishments with her, she responded with authentic enthusiasm rather than competitive comparison. "It's amazing how quickly you've established yourself here," Mai said one evening as we shared dinner on my small balcony. "You seem so much more relaxed than when you first moved in." I realized she was right. The perpetual tension I had carried in my shoulders had eased. The careful monitoring of my facial expressions and tone, habits developed over years of having my reactions weaponized against me, had begun to fall away. I was starting to take up space in my own life without apology. Throughout this period of transformation, my phone remained silent. No calls from my parents demanding explanations, no manipulative texts from Emma, no judgmental check-ins from Sophia. Their silence confirmed what I had always suspected but had been afraid to fully acknowledge. I had mattered to them only in my role as scapegoat, not as a daughter or sister. The family system was reorganizing itself without me, finding new ways to distribute blame and maintain their illusion of perfection. The silence was both vindication and a final loss, absolute proof that I had made the right decision, but also confirmation that what I had longed for had never existed. There had never been love hidden beneath the criticism, no real connection waiting to be uncovered if I just tried hard enough or became good enough. The revelation was both liberating and lonely. As the 3rd week of my new life came to a close, I stood at my apartment window watching a summer storm roll across the Portland skyline. Lightning illuminated the harbor in brief, brilliant flashes. And I thought about the power of sudden clarity, how in an instant everything can be illuminated, revealing truths that were always present but hidden in darkness. In that hospital room a month ago, I had experienced such clarity. Now with each passing day of freedom, I was learning to trust the light. 3 weeks after my departure, Jason texted me. I had been surprised not to hear from him sooner, but his message explained the delay. "I've been trying to process everything. Can we talk?" I agreed to a phone call, more curious than anything else about what narrative my family had constructed in my absence. When he called that evening, his voice sounded strained. "They're saying you had some kind of breakdown," he began without preamble. "Your father thinks the pressure of your research position got to you." I wasn't surprised. "And what do you think?" "Jason," there was a long pause. "I don't know what to think. Everything happened so fast. One minute we were all at the lake house, and the next Emma was injured and you were gone. Your family has a very cohesive explanation." "I'm sure they do," I replied calmly. "They've had plenty of practice." Over the next hour, Jason painted a picture of what had happened after I left. According to him, my family's initial reaction was dismissive. "Your mother kept saying you were being dramatic as usual, and that you'd be back once you got over yourself." Emma predictably was milking her minor injury for all it was worth. She had insisted on using crutches, despite the doctor saying they weren't necessary, and had been posting pitiful updates on social media about healing from trauma. The comments sections were filled with supportive messages, many subtly alluding to my supposed role in her injury. "Your parents made some calls to your apartment in Boston," Jason continued. "When they couldn't reach you, they seemed more annoyed than concerned. Your father said something about you always making things about yourself." Sophia had apparently taken charge of the narrative, telling extended family and friends that I was having a mental breakdown and that they were giving me space to get the help I needed. The subtext was clear. My absence was yet another problem I had created, another way I had disrupted the family's harmony. Jason described an uncomfortable dinner at my parents' house a week after my departure. They invited me over, I think to get information about where you might have gone. When I said I genuinely didn't know, the conversation got tense. The strangest part was how little they actually mentioned you. It was like they were actively avoiding saying your name. This detail didn't surprise me. My absence had created a gap in their family system. Without the designated scapegoat, tensions had nowhere to go. They were trying to maintain the illusion that everything was fine, that my departure was just another act of selfishness, rather than a symptom of their dysfunction. As Jason continued to share observations from his interactions with my family, a pattern emerged. Without me there to absorb blame, cracks were appearing in the Mitchell family facade. Emma's husband Tyler had apparently reached his limit. He left 3 days after you did, Jason reported. Something about finally seeing the family dynamic clearly. Without you there as a buffer, Emma's been staying with your parents since then. I felt a twinge of sympathy for Tyler. As an in-law, he had probably been insulated from the worst of the family dysfunction by my presence. With me gone, he would have been next in line for blame. More surprisingly, my father's business was suffering. His longtime business partner, Gerald Thompson, had withdrawn from a major development deal they'd been working on for months. Your father was furious, Jason said. He kept saying Gerald had betrayed him, but from what I gathered, Gerald had concerns about your father's stability after witnessing some family interaction at the hospital. My mother was struggling to maintain her social standing without her perfect family narrative. She had to cancel hosting the summer charity luncheon, Jason reported. The official reason was renovations at the house, but Emma let slip that some of the committee members had been asking uncomfortable questions about you. Sophia's picture-perfect life was showing strain as well. Her children had been asking questions about their missing aunt, questions she couldn't answer without disrupting the family narrative. She seemed really tense when she mentioned it, Jason noted, like she wasn't sure what story to tell them. As Jason shared these details, I felt no satisfaction in their difficulties. This wasn't the revenge I had sought. I had simply wanted freedom from a role that was destroying me. Their struggles were the natural consequence of a dysfunctional system losing its pressure valve. Toward the end of our conversation, Jason's tone changed. I need to be honest with you, Olivia. I don't think I can handle being caught in the meaty middle of all this family drama. You're an amazing woman, but this situation is too complicated for me. I appreciated his honesty, if not his courage. I understand, Jason. Thank you for letting me know. After we hung up, I sent him a brief email. Thank you for your honesty. I wish you well. It was a clean break, with no anger or recrimination. The relationship had been important to me, but I recognized now that I needed someone who would stand firmly by my side, not waver at the first sign of family pressure. In the days that followed, I reflected on the information Jason had shared. The Mitchell family system was experiencing the consequences of losing its scapegoat. Without me there to blame, they were being forced to confront their own dynamics and responsibilities. The problems they had attributed to me for years: Emma's dramatic behavior, my father's stress levels, my mother's social anxiety, Sophia's marital tensions were continuing or even worsening in my absence, revealing the truth that I had never been their cause. I felt neither joy nor sorrow at their struggles. Instead, I felt a profound sense of confirmation. My departure had been necessary not just for my well-being, but as the only truthful response to a lifetime of false narratives. As Dr. Chen had said in one of our sessions, sometimes the healthiest thing you can do in a dysfunctional system is to leave it. Your absence creates space for truth, even if that truth is painful. As the 4th week of my new life began, I felt more certain than ever that I had made the right choice. The Mitchell family would continue their dance of projection and denial, but I was no longer a participant. I was writing a new story now, one based on truth and authentic connection, rather than assigned roles and maintained illusions. Exactly 1 month after I walked out of that hospital room, my phone lit up with calls from unfamiliar numbers, 3 calls in the span of 10 minutes, all from different Boston area codes. I watched them ring through to voicemail without answering. 20 minutes later, my email inbox began filling with messages from family members, including addresses I hadn't seen in years, distant cousins, my father's sister whom I barely knew, even my mother's college roommate. I called Lauren immediately. "They've found a way to contact me. Are you going to respond?" she asked. I hesitated. "I don't know. Part of me wants to know what's happened, but I'm afraid of getting pulled back in. Whatever you decide, make sure it's from a position of strength, not guilt," she advised. "You've worked too hard this month to go back to being their emotional regulator." I decided not to respond immediately. Instead, I went to my scheduled therapy session with Dr. Chen, bringing printouts of the emails I'd received. "These messages have a common theme," Dr. Chen observed as she reviewed them. "They all convey urgency without specific details. That's often a manipulation tactic, creating a sense of emergency to bypass boundaries." She was right. The emails contained phrases like family emergency and need to speak with you immediately, but offered no concrete information that would allow me to assess the actual situation. Then, as we were talking, an email arrived from Harriet Collins, a family friend who had always been kind to me and had little to gain from participating in Mitchell family drama. The subject line was direct: "The truth about what's happening with your family." With Dr. Chen's support, I opened the email. "Dear Olivia, I hope this message finds you well. I've debated whether to reach out, but I believe you deserve to know what's happening." The story Emma told about her accident has unraveled. A nurse at the hospital overheard her boasting to a friend on the phone about how she had totally convinced everyone you had pushed her. When confronted by hospital staff about potentially filing a false report, she admitted she had fallen deliberately. Tyler filed for divorce last week, citing pathological lying and manipulation in the paperwork. He's been quite open about Emma's pattern of deception and your family's enabling behavior. Your father's business is in serious trouble. Gerald Thompson has not only withdrawn from their current project, but has spoken to other investors about his concerns regarding your father's judgment after witnessing his behavior at the hospital. The Thompson family has been a cornerstone of Boston business for generations, and Gerald's words carry significant weight. Your mother had what could only be described as a meltdown at the Westridge Country Club Charity Committee meeting. When Judith Abernathy innocently asked about you, your mother began shouting about family loyalty and ungrateful children. Margaret Peterson, who has chaired the committee for 15 years, asked her to step down from her positions until she resolves her personal issues. Sophia's marriage is also showing cracks. Bradley has moved into their guest house, ostensibly for work privacy, but people have seen him with a younger colleague from his firm. Most significantly, your family has begun turning on each other. Without you there to blame, they've started accusing each other. Your father blames your mother for coddling Emma. Your mother blames Sophia for setting impossible standards. Sophia blames your parents for creating this mess with their parenting. And Emma, of course, blames everyone but herself. I thought you should know that many of us who watched from the periphery for years saw the truth of your situation. Not everyone believed the narrative your family constructed about you. Take care of yourself, Olivia. Sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting yourself from those who cannot or will not acknowledge their own harmful behaviors. Sincerely, Harriet Collins. I sat in silence after reading the email, feelings washing over me in waves: validation, sadness, a strange sense of relief, and something approaching closure. How are you feeling, Dr. Chen asked gently. Like someone finally saw me, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion behind it. Over the next few hours, the voicemails and emails continued to increase in urgency. My father's message was the most revealing. Olivia, this has gone on long enough. Your behavior is affecting the family's reputation. We need you to come home and help fix the situation you've created. Even now, he was framing the family's unraveling as my responsibility. My mother's voicemail was similarly self-centered. Darling, I don't know what's gotten into you, but we need you home. The Petersons are asking questions and I don't know what to tell them. Most surprising was an email from Sophia, containing the first acknowledgement I had ever received from a family member. Liv, I know we've never been close and that's largely my fault. I've been thinking about things since you left and I'm starting to see patterns I never noticed before. I'm not saying Mom and Dad were right or wrong in how they treated you, but I should have been a better sister. The family is falling apart. Without you, I know that's not your problem, but would you consider coming home at least for a family meeting? We need to figure out how to move forward, and you were always the one who understood emotional stuff. Sophia, even in her attempt at reconciliation, Sophia was asking me to resume my role as family caretaker. She wasn't offering a relationship. Based on mutual respect, she was requesting my services as emotional regulator for a system in crisis. Emma was notably silent among the barrage of communication, perhaps the only honest response from any of them. She knew exactly what she had done and likely realized that no manipulation would work on me now. The most unexpected contact came from my former family therapist, Dr. Marcus, who had seen us briefly when I was a teenager before my parents discontinued the sessions for being unnecessarily invasive. Dear Olivia, I hope you remember me from the family sessions your parents arranged years ago. While I normally wouldn't reach out to a former client, I'm concerned about the dynamics I'm observing in your family system following your departure. Your parents have scheduled an emergency session, ostensibly to discuss how to help you with your issues. But it's become clear to me that the family system is struggling to reorganize itself without its designated scapegoat. I want you to know that I recognize the role you were being asked to play even back then. I tried to address it, which is likely why your parents terminated therapy so quickly. Whatever you're doing now to establish healthy boundaries is courageous work. If you would like a referral to a colleague in your area who specializes in family, estrangement, and recovery, please let me know. Take care. Dr. Robert Marcus. Reading this professional validation of what I had experienced brought tears to my eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound relief of being seen and understood. As the calls and messages continued throughout the day, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Part of me felt a shadow of satisfaction that the truth was finally emerging. Another part felt genuine sadness for the pain my family was experiencing, even though it was the natural consequence of their own actions. But mostly, I felt a strengthening resolve to maintain the boundaries I had established. I took these complicated feelings to my next session with Dr. Chen. I feel guilty, I admitted, not for leaving, but for not feeling worse about their suffering. That's a common reaction, she assured me. You've been conditioned your entire life to prioritize their emotions over your own. The fact that you can acknowledge their pain while still maintaining your boundaries is a sign of health, not callousness. We discussed whether I should respond to any of the messages. What would serve your healing process? Dr. Chen asked. Not what would help them, or what would be expected of you, but what would support your journey. After careful reflection, I decided to maintain my silence, responding now, when they were in crisis and looking for someone to stabilize their system, would only reinforce the dynamic I had worked so hard to escape. If there was ever to be any healthy communication between us, it would need to happen after they had done their own work, not as a reaction to their discomfort with the consequences of their behavior. That evening, I received an unexpected package, delivered by courier. The return address showed it was from Northampton, Massachusetts, the town where my grandmother Eleanor had lived before she passed away 5 years ago. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I opened it carefully. Inside was a collection of journals, letters, and a small wooden box. On top was an envelope addressed to me in handwriting I didn't recognize. The letter inside explained everything. Dear Olivia, you don't know me, but I was your grandmother Eleanor's dear friend for over 50 years. My name is Margaret Winters. Eleanor left these items in my care before she passed, with explicit instructions to send them to you if certain circumstances arose. She said if Olivia ever finds the strength to leave that toxic situation, she'll need these to understand she's not alone. I've kept track of your family through mutual acquaintances over the years. When I heard about recent events, I knew it was time to fulfill my promise to Eleanor. She saw everything, Olivia. She tried to intervene many times, but was shut out by your parents for her efforts. These journals and letters will explain much more than I can. Eleanor loved you deeply and recognized in you the same strength and clarity she possessed. If you wish to talk, my contact information is enclosed. With care, Margaret Winters. I stayed up all night reading through my grandmother's journals, tears streaming down my face as I discovered a truth that had been hidden from me my entire life. Grandmother Eleanor's journals dated back to before I was born. The earliest entries detailed her concerns about my mother's parenting of Sophia, noting a troubling pattern of projection and unhealthy enmeshment. When I came along 3 years later, her writing took on a more urgent tone. May 12, 1995. Martha has decided that little Olivia, just 2, is deliberately difficult. I watched today as Olivia simply reached for a toy that Sophia had discarded, only for Martha to scold her for always taking what isn't hers. Richard backed Martha up, of course. I tried to point out that the toy had been abandoned, but Martha gave me that look that says I should mind my own business. I fear they're already casting this child in a role that will shape her entire life. As I read entry after entry, a pattern emerged. Grandmother Eleanor had recognized the scapegoating dynamic from the very beginning and had attempted repeatedly to intervene, only to be gradually pushed out of the family's inner circle for her efforts. November 18, 2000. Richard exploded at me today when I suggested that perhaps Olivia wasn't entirely to blame for the broken window. I saw Emma throwing the ball in the house earlier, but when the crash came, she immediately pointed to her sister. Instead of investigating, Richard sent Olivia to her room without dinner. When I tried to speak up, he told me that I was undermining their parenting and suggested it might be best if I shortened my visit. I'm frightened for Olivia. At 7 years old, she's already developing that watchful look I recognize from my own childhood. The most shocking revelation came in a series of entries from when I was a teenager. April 3rd, 2008. I've made a decision today. I cannot change how Richard and Martha parent, but I can ensure that Olivia has resources when she's older. I've spoken with my attorney about setting up a trust fund specifically for her. Richard and Martha will be furious when they learn I've not divided my estate equally among the granddaughters, but I've seen how they control Sophia and Emma through financial means. Olivia will need independence if she's ever to break free of the role they've assigned her. Accompanying the journals was a letter from my grandmother's attorney, dated just a month after her death. It was addressed to me, but had clearly never been delivered. Dear Miss Mitchell, as the executor of Eleanor Mitchell's estate, it is my duty to inform you of the trust fund established in your name. The account contains $175,000 to be available to you upon reaching the age of 25, or upon completion of your graduate studies, whichever comes first. Your grandmother was explicit that this information should be communicated directly to you, not through your parents. If you have not received this letter, please contact our office immediately. Sincerely, Jonathan Weiss, Esky. I was 29 years old. The trust fund had been available to me for years, but I had never known about it. With trembling hands, I found a more recent letter in the package, again from Jonathan Weiss. Dear Miss Mitchell, it has come to our attention that you may not have received our previous communications regarding your grandmother's trust. Margaret Winters has informed us of your current situation, and we are prepared to transfer the funds immediately upon verification of your identity. The original amount has grown with interest to approximately $227,000. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to arrange the transfer. Sincerely, Jonathan Weiss, Esky. Among the papers was a small collection of photographs I had never seen before. My grandmother at my high school graduation, sitting far in the back where my parents wouldn't notice her. Eleanor watching from her car as I received a science award in my junior year. A photo of me giving my valedictorian speech, taken from the very edge of the auditorium. She had been there for all these moments, silently supporting me when my own parents had found excuses not to attend. The wooden box contained one final surprise. A letter from my grandmother addressed to me, dated just weeks before her death. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then you've found the strength I always knew you possessed. I've watched you grow into an extraordinary young woman, despite the unfair burden placed on your shoulders from such a young age. What you've experienced has a name: family scapegoating. I recognize it because I lived it myself. My own mother selected me for the same role you've been assigned, while my sister Ruth was the golden child. The pattern repeats through generations. Unless someone finds the courage to break it, I tried to protect you. Every time I spoke up, I was pushed further from the family circle until my access to you was severely limited. This is why I appeared absent for so much of your life, not from lack of love but from being deliberately kept away after each attempt to intervene. The money I've left you is not just financial support but a key to freedom. Use it to build the life you deserve, free from the constraints of a role you never asked to play. Know this: there is nothing wrong with you. There never was. You were selected not for any deficiency but because your strength, intelligence, and integrity threatened a family system built on denial and projection. I see you, Olivia. I have always seen you. With all my love, Grandma Eleanor. The revelation that my grandmother had not only recognized my situation but had actively tried to help me and had been pushed away for those efforts was both heartbreaking and healing. I had not been alone. After all, someone in my family had loved me for exactly who I was. In the days that followed, I verified the trust fund's existence and arranged for the transfer. This unexpected financial security amplified my sense of possibility. I could now consider options that had previously seemed impractical: buying a small home instead of renting, taking time to write the book on family systems I'd been conceptualizing, even starting my own practice focused on helping others recover from family scapegoating. I had a long conversation with Margaret Winters, my grandmother's friend, who filled in many of the gaps in my understanding. "Your grandmother saw the pattern from the beginning," Margaret explained. "She recognized it because she'd lived it herself. Every time she tried to intervene, your parents would restrict her access to you and your sisters. The emerald necklace she gave you. It was her mother's, the one family member who had shown her kindness. She wanted you to have that connection to a better legacy." Learning about this intergenerational pattern helped me contextualize my experience within a broader framework. This wasn't just about me or even just about my immediate family. It was about a dysfunctional pattern that had been passed down through generations, a pattern I now had the awareness and resources to break. I dove deeper into the research on family scapegoating, connecting my professional knowledge with my personal experience in a way I had always subconsciously avoided. I found studies showing that scapegoated children were often the most emotionally intelligent or truth-telling members of their families, qualities that threatened the family's preferred narrative. Through further investigation, prompted by documents in my grandmother's papers, I discovered that my parents had also hidden the existence of a college fund my grandparents on my father's side had established for each grandchild. Sophia and Emma had received their portions, but I had been told repeatedly that I needed to fund my own education because the money just wasn't there. This financial deception explained the substantial student loan debt I had accumulated while my sisters had graduated debt-free. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in financial disputes. While I had legal grounds to pursue the misappropriated college fund, I decided against legal action for now. The emotional cost of engaging in a protracted battle with my family outweighed the potential financial recovery. I had the trust from grandmother Eleanor now, and with it, the freedom to make decisions based on what would support my healing rather than what I was legally entitled to. With this newfound financial security, I put a down payment on a small craftsman bungalow in a quiet Portland neighborhood. The house needed some work, but it had character and a small garden, something I had always wanted but had been told was impractical by my practical-minded father. I accepted the full-time position at the Research Institute, focusing specifically on resilience factors in adults recovering from childhood family trauma. Dr. Montgomery was enthusiastic about my proposed research direction, noting that it filled an important gap in the literature. As I settled into my new home and career, I wrote a heartfelt letter to Margaret Winters. "Dear Margaret, I cannot adequately express what receiving my grandmother's journals and letters has meant to me. For so long, I believed I was completely alone in seeing the dynamics of my family clearly. Discovering that Grandma Eleanor not only saw the truth but tried to protect me has been profoundly healing. Please know that her efforts were not in vain. The resources she left me have helped secure my independence, and her words have validated my experience in a way that has accelerated my healing journey significantly. I would be honored to meet you in person someday, when you feel it would be appropriate. You've given me the greatest gift possible, connection to the one family member who truly loved me for who I am. With deepest gratitude, Olivia. As I sealed the envelope, I felt a sense of connection to a family legacy I could actually be proud of. Not the thought of perfection the Mitchells projected to the world, but the authentic strength and clarity that had flowed from my grandmother to me. I was not breaking a family tradition, but honoring one, the tradition of women who eventually found the courage to see clearly and live truthfully. The journals, letters, and photographs now sat on a special shelf in my new home office, a tangible reminder that my perception had been accurate all along. I hadn't been crazy or oversensitive, or deficient in any way. I had been a child placed in an impossible role, and now I was an adult who had found the strength to write a new story. 3 months after my departure, as I was settling into my new home and life, the confrontation I had both expected and dreaded finally arrived. I was planting fall bulbs in my small front garden when a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Even before the doors opened, I knew who it was. The Mitchell family had found me. My father emerged from the driver's side, looking older than I remembered. My mother exited the passenger door, immaculately dressed as always, but with a tightness around her eyes that was new. Sophia stepped out from the back seat, her expression unreadable. Emma was noticeably absent. I straightened up slowly, garden trowel still in hand, a strange calm settling over me. I had known this moment would come eventually. In fact, I had prepared for it with Dr. Chen. Olivia, my father called, striding up the walkway as if he owned the property. This has gone on long enough. It's time to come home. I noticed my neighbors across the street glancing over curiously. This was not a conversation I wanted to have in public view, nor did I want these people in my home, my sanctuary. I'm not having this conversation in my front yard, I said calmly. If you want to talk, we can meet at the cafe 2 blocks from here. In 1 hour, I'll bring someone with me. Bring someone? What are you talking about? My mother demanded. We're your family. We don't need strangers involved in our private matters. That's my condition, I replied, my voice steady. The cafe at 2 o'clock? With my therapist present or not at all? My father's face darkened with familiar anger. Now listen here. No, I interrupted, surprising all of us. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. I went inside without waiting for their response, closing the door firmly behind me. My hands were shaking as I called Dr. Chen, who agreed to meet us at the cafe. I then texted Lauren, letting her know what was happening in case I needed backup. An hour later, I sat at a corner table in Riverbank Cafe with Dr. Chen beside me. The Mitchell family arrived exactly on time, punctuality being one of my father's non-negotiable values. As they approached our table, I could see them assessing Dr. Chen, trying to determine how much I had told her and how to adjust their performance accordingly. Olivia, my mother began as they sat down, reaching across to touch my hand. I gently moved my hand away. We've been so worried. To just disappear like that without a word. I left a note, I said quietly. I won't be your scapegoat anymore is not an explanation. My father cut in. It's a childish accusation, Dr. Chen observed. It sounds like Olivia was expressing a boundary about her role in the family system. My father's attention snapped to her. With all due respect, you're only hearing one side of a complicated family dynamic. That's why I'm here, Dr. Chen replied calmly. To observe the dynamic directly, Sophia, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. Liv, we understand you needed some space, but to cut us off completely, to not even let us know you were safe, that was cruel. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I'd like to share something with you. I placed my childhood diary on the table. This is the record I kept from ages 8 to 16. I'd like to read a few entries. Before they could object, I opened to a marked page and began reading. December 25, 2006, Christmas Day. Sophia broke the crystal angel ornament while reaching for her stocking. When Mum came in, Sophia said I knocked it over while running. I wasn't even in the room when it happened. I got sent to my room until dinner and didn't get to open presents with everyone else. Dad said I ruined Christmas again. This is the 3rd year I've been blamed for ruining Christmas. I looked up to see my mother's face flushed with anger or embarrassment. It was hard to tell which. My father's jaw was set in a familiar rigid line. I continued with another entry. April 30, 2009. Emma took my history project to show her friends and returned it with pages missing. When I showed Mum, she said I should have kept it where Emma couldn't get it. When I got an F, Dad grounded me for not taking academics seriously. And one asked Emma why she took it or what happened to the missing pages. Sophia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I selected one final entry. July 18, 2010. Dad yelled at me for an hour because the garage door was left open all night. Emma admitted later that she was the last one to use it, but said, "There's no point telling Dad now. He always believes it was you anyway." She laughed when she said it. I closed the diary. I have dozens of entries like these. For years I documented the pattern because I thought if I just had enough evidence you might believe me. I now understand that was never going to happen because the family system required a scapegoat. Childhood diary entries? Really, Olivia? My father scoffed. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. What I'm hearing, Dr. Chen interjected, is that Olivia felt consistently misunderstood and unfairly blamed within the family system. All children feel that way sometimes, my mother dismissed. Olivia was always more sensitive than the other girls. That's exactly the dynamic I'm referring to, Dr. Chen noted. When Olivia expresses her experience, it's redefined as a personal deficiency rather than acknowledged. My father's patience was visibly wearing thin. We didn't come here for family therapy. We came to bring Olivia home and sort this mess out privately. I'm not coming home, I said clearly. I have a home now, this one, and I've learnt something else. Recently, I removed the letter from Jonathan Weiss from my bag. Did you know about Grandma Eleanor's trust fund for me? The sudden stillness that fell over my parents confirmed what I already knew. You did. No, I continued. You knew, and you deliberately kept it from me, just like you kept the college fund from Grandpa Mitchell from me while giving Sophia and Emma their portions. That's not true, my father started, but his protest lacked conviction. I have the documentation, I said simply. I've spoken with the attorneys. My mother's composure finally cracked. Your grandmother had no right to interfere in how we raised our children. She always favored you, always undermined our parenting. That money should have been divided equally. It was her money, Mum. She could do what she wanted with it. And she saw what was happening to me, what you were doing, even when I couldn't fully see it myself. Sophia looked genuinely shocked. You had a trust fund this whole time, and a college fund, but you took out all those student loans. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face, as if she was beginning to reassess the family narrative she had accepted her entire life. My father, sensing he was losing control of the situation, resorted to his most effective tactic, the ultimatum. Enough of this nonsense. Olivia, you have a choice to make right now. You can come home with us, rejoin the family, and we'll put this unfortunate episode behind us, or you can continue with this rebellion and accept that you're no longer part of this family. The cafe had grown quiet, other patrons subtly watching the drama unfold. Dr. Chen observed, that sounds like a false choice being presented. There are many ways to be part of a family beyond either total submission or complete estrangement. My father ignored her, his eyes fixed on me. What's it going to be, Olivia? Are you a Mitchell or not? I met his gaze steadily. I haven't been part of a real family my entire life. What I've been is a convenient target, a repository for blame, a role rather than a person. I'm not rejecting family, I'm rejecting dysfunction. My mother's face crumpled into tears, but I recognized the performance from years of experience. These were tears designed to elicit guilt and compliance, not expressions of genuine emotion. How can you say such cruel things? She sobbed. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? You've criticized me, blamed me, diminished me, and lied to me. You kept me from the one family member who actually loved me for who I am. You stole money that was specifically left to me. Tell me, what should I be grateful for? My words hung in the air between us. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had spoken my complete truth to my family, without filtering it through fear or the desperate hope for acceptance. My father stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Come, Martha, Sophia, we're leaving. My mother rose immediately, her tears stopping as quickly as they had started. Sophia hesitated, looking between me and our parents with confusion. Sophia? My father prompted sharply. She stood slowly. I don't know what to think anymore, Liv. You don't have to decide right now, I told her quietly. My door is open if you ever want to talk, really talk, without Mom and Dad's narrative shaping the conversation. My father practically pulled my mother from the cafe, Sophia trailing behind them. Through the window, I watched them climb into their SUV and drive away, my father's rigid posture visible even from a distance. Dr. Chen placed a hand gently on my shoulder. How are you feeling? Surprisingly okay, I realized. I've been dreading that confrontation for months, but now that it's happened, I feel free. As we gathered our things to leave, one of the baristas approached our table. I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhearing some of that. I just wanted to say, you're really brave. I thanked her, touched by this small kindness from a stranger who had witnessed a pivotal moment in my life. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Warily, I answered. Olivia, it's Emma. Of all the people I expected to hear from after the cafe confrontation, my younger sister was last on the list. Emma, How did you get this number? Sophia gave it to me, she admitted. She's confused right now about a lot of things. There was an uncomfortable silence before she continued, her voice smaller than I had ever heard it. I didn't come with them today because I couldn't face you. Not after what I did at the lake house. You mean when you deliberately fell and blamed me for pushing you? Yeah, she said softly. That, and everything else. All the times I blamed you for things I did. All the times I watched you get punished for my mistakes and said nothing. I sat in stunned silence, never having expected any acknowledgement from Emma, let alone what sounded like genuine remorse. I'm in therapy now, she continued. After Tyler left, I had to look at some things about myself, and then when you left too, and everything started falling apart, I realized I didn't like who I'd become. Why are you telling me this, Emma? She exhaled, shakily, not to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. Just to tell you that you were right to leave, and that at least one person in this family knows the truth about how you were treated. It wasn't much, but it was something, a small crack in the edifice of family denial that had defined my existence for so long. As I hung up, I wondered if this was the beginning of a new kind of relationship with at least one member of my family. One based on truth rather than assigned roles and comfortable fictions. 6 months after walking out of that hospital room, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. My small bungalow had become a true home, with walls painted in colors I loved, furniture arranged for comfort rather than appearance, and a thriving garden that brought me daily joy. Einstein the cat had claimed the sunniest windowsill as his domain, his presence a constant reminder that I was never truly alone. My professional life was flourishing. The Research Institute had embraced my focus on family trauma recovery, and my paper on resilience factors in adult survivors of family scapegoating had been accepted for publication in a prestigious journal. Dr. Montgomery had become not just a supervisor, but a mentor, recognizing the unique perspective I brought to our field. Your work is resonating with so many of our colleagues, she told me during our weekly meeting. There's talk of developing a specialized treatment protocol based on your research. The trust fund from grandmother Eleanor had provided not just financial security, but opportunities I would never have considered possible before. I had started a small foundation providing educational grants to young people from dysfunctional families, naming it the Eleanor Mitchell Foundation in her honor. The first 3 recipients had been selected, bright, resilient young people who reminded me of myself at their age, but who would now have support I never had. My personal life had begun to blossom as well. I had met Daniel, a landscape architect, with kind eyes and a patient manner, at a community garden workshop. Our relationship was developing slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's thoughts and feelings, a stark contrast to the performance-based connections I had known in my family. What surprised me most was the family I had created around me, not of blood, but of choice. Lauren remained my closest friend, but my circle had expanded to include May from next door, colleagues from the Institute, members of my pottery class, and neighbors who had become regular dinner guests. These relationships were characterized by reciprocity and authenticity, concepts that had been entirely absent from my experience of family. Emma and I maintained cautious contact. She had continued with therapy, separated herself from our parents' influence, and was living independently for the first time in her life. Our conversations were sometimes awkward, often painful, but always honest. She was doing the difficult work of examining her role in the family system and her treatment of me, which I respected, even if complete forgiveness remained a work in progress. My therapist says I was the golden child to your scapegoat, she told me during one of our monthly phone calls. I never realized how trapped I was in that role too, just in a different way. My parents and Sophia had maintained their stance of righteous indignation following our confrontation at the CAF. They had sent a formal letter, through their attorney no less, stating that they would welcome me back into the family when I was ready to apologize for my accusations and resume my proper role. I had filed the letter away without responding, recognizing it as one final attempt to re-establish the dynamic I had escaped. Margaret Winters, my grandmother's friend, had become a cherished presence in my life. At 82, she possessed the sharp wit and clear-eyed wisdom that I remembered from Grandma Eleanor. She had begun visiting from Northampton every few months, each visit bringing more stories about my grandmother and strengthening my connection to the family legacy I could embrace with pride. "Eleanor would be so proud of you," Margaret told me during her last visit, "not just for leaving, but for what you've built since then." One of the most meaningful developments in my new life was my volunteer work with the Portland Youth Mentorship Program, where I worked with teenage girls from troubled families. Many of them showed the hypervigilance and self-doubt that I recognized from my own adolescence. Using my professional knowledge and personal experience, I helped them identify healthy boundaries and recognize their inherent worth outside of family-assigned roles. "You're the first adult who's ever really listened to me," 14-year-old Zoe told me after our third mentoring session. Her words were both heartbreaking and affirming, confirmation that the cycle could be broken, that a different kind of connection was possible. My research on family scapegoating had gained significant attention in academic circles, leading to an invitation to speak at a major psychology conference in Boston. The irony wasn't lost on me that this professional recognition would take place in the city I had fled, potentially putting me in proximity to my parents' social circle. After careful consideration, I accepted the invitation. My story was no longer something to hide, but a source of insight that could help others. As I prepared my presentation, I received an unexpected email from a distant cousin on my father's side, whom I barely knew. "Dear Olivia, we've never really known each other well, but I've been following your research through my work as a school counselor." I was stunned to realize that the family dynamics you described so accurately mirror my own experience in another branch of the Mitchell family. For years, I've been the designated problem in my immediate family. "Reading your work has been like finding a key to a door I didn't even know was locked. I finally understand what's been happening. I wonder if this pattern runs deeper in our family history than either of us realized. If you're open to it, I'd love to connect and compare notes. Perhaps together we could help others in our extended family who might be experiencing the same pattern." With hope and admiration, Rebecca Mitchell Cohen. This email sparked an idea that had been forming gradually in my mind, creating a network for family scapegoats to connect, share resources, and support each other in establishing healthy boundaries. The intergenerational nature of the pattern meant that countless others were suffering in isolation just as I had. Perhaps my painful experience could become a bridge to healing for others. My final conversation with Dr. Chen before the conference touched on the complex nature of forgiveness and acceptance. "Many people assume that healing requires forgiveness," she observed, "but what I've seen in my practice is that acceptance often comes first. Accepting that your family members may never acknowledge their behavior or change their patterns. I think I've reached that point," I realized. I no longer expect my parents or Sophia to suddenly see the truth or validate my experience. And strangely, that's freed me from needing their validation at all. "That's profound healing," Dr. Chen smiled, "when their opinion of you no longer determines your worth." On a crisp autumn morning, as I planted bulbs in my garden that would bloom the following spring, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. Leaving had not been an end, but a beginning. The start of discovering who Olivia Mitchell truly was outside of the role she had been assigned. The garden seemed a perfect metaphor for my new life. I was carefully selecting what to nurture, creating boundaries against invasive elements, and patiently tending to growth that would take time to fully bloom. Some plantings were already thriving, while others were just seeds with potential. The garden wasn't perfect or finished. It was evolving, responding to care and attention, gradually becoming more fully itself with each passing season. As I patted soil around a cluster of tulip bulbs, I thought about how different this fall was from the last one. A year ago, I had been bracing myself for another holiday season of subtle criticisms and assigned blame. This year, I was planning a Thanksgiving dinner for my chosen family, friends who saw and appreciated me for exactly who I was. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, asking if I needed anything from the garden center where he was picking up supplies for his latest project. This small, thoughtful gesture, someone actually considering my needs without expectation of return, still surprised me sometimes. I texted back my request and added a heart emoji, something the old Olivia would have analyzed for hours before sending, worried about appearing too eager or too emotional. Now I expressed my feelings freely, no longer fearing they would be used against me. Standing in my garden, surrounded by evidence of the life I had built for myself, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy. And there were still difficult days when old patterns of thought tried to reassert themselves, but with each passing month, those days became fewer, and the voice of my authentic self grew stronger. I had left my family's house without a word, carrying only what mattered most. In doing so, I had discovered that what mattered most had been within me all along: the courage to see clearly, the strength to act on that vision, and the capacity to build a life defined by truth rather than convenient fictions. If you're watching this, and something in my story resonates with your own experience, please know you're not alone. Family systems can be incredibly powerful, but your truth is even stronger. I'd love to hear about your journey in the comments below. Has family karma ever revealed itself in your life? Has standing up for yourself ever led to unexpected freedom? Like this video? If you found any part of my story helpful, subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics. And share with someone who might need to hear that they're not crazy for seeing what others refuse to acknowledge. Thank you for witnessing my story, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and ultimately for your family is to break the pattern, even when it means walking away. The truth is, family isn't just about blood, it's about who sees you, respects you, and loves you for exactly who you are.